podcast of the PPO, podcast about everything from the world of public procurement.
Dear listeners, welcome to another episode of Public Procurement Office Podcast. It is my honor to talk today with Mr. Marko Turudić, Associate Professor on Law Faculty in Záhrebe. Mr. Professor, could you please introduce yourself and tell us what is your specialization in public procurement?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. This is the first podcast I have done in my life, so hopefully you won't be disappointed. I'm an administrative law professor, associate professor from University of Záhrebe, Faculty of Law. I'm a vice dean and the head of the Study Center for Public Administration and Public Finances, and I teach administrative procedure, administrative law, administrative disputes, but I almost exclusively write about public procurement. So public procurement is the main topic of interest in my research.
But how did you get to this topic? It is not that common.
It's a funny story. Nobody believes me when I share this story. When I was a young assistant at my department, my then boss Marko Turudić told me the conversation went like this. Marko, we're both Marko, but he was talking to me. Marko, we have an elective course at our university. It's called public procurement. I talked to everybody else at the administrative law department. Nobody wants to have anything to do with this. It's really boring. Unfortunately, you are the youngest and you are going to teach it. And I was really mad, to say the least. I hated my boss for a long time. I had to start learning a completely new administrative procedure because my PhD is in electronic communications regulation. I had to teach a whole new administrative procedure because you're teaching it to students. You have to have some authority, some knowledge. And it took me about 6 months to have the courage or knowledge, in my opinion, to say something to the students. But after those 6 months, after a year, I started to see things that are really interesting.
Like what, for example?
I mean, you have a lot of things in public procurement. You have a lot of politics, you have a lot of economy, you have a lot of competition, you have a lot of international relations, and these are some of the topics we are going to cover today at this podcast, the external dimension of EU law. And what's really, really important, it's an EU law. It's a harmonized EU law because all of us have the same directives. Of course, these are directives. We transpose them differently, but we are living under the same constraints of public procurement. And when I come to talk to Slovakia or any other member state of the EU, we have a lot in common, and it's much easier to talk to people from Slovakia, experts from Denmark, Spain, and so on, because public procurement is something that we all share. Then it would be to talk to somebody who deals with civil law or penal law in a different member state, because this is not so established or given by the directives. So it's really, really interesting. Now.
What are the biggest challenges you face right now in public procurement in Croatia?
In Croatia, remedies. Remedies are the biggest challenge because we have really high appeal fees, which were severely increased in late 2022. And we have a new amendment of the Public Procurement Act coming in a couple of weeks, in a month. There were some rumors, and the first draft of the amendments included a reduction in the appeal fees, but they removed it from the final act, so they are not going to lower the appeal fees. And Maya can tell you much more about this, but we had maybe 1,000 appeals per year in Croatia, and now we have maybe 600 after the appeal fee increase.
But wasn't this exactly why they put it there?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
actually the law...
It's working.
Exactly.
It's doing what was intended.
So the government is happy?
Yeah, the government is happy because I think they achieved what they wanted to achieve, but I think because, as you know, all of our public procurement systems, the remedies are depend on private initiative of economic operators participating in public procurement procedures. And if you make it difficult for them or expensive for them to submit appeals, they are not going to appeal, and it's a really weird situation. I tell my students when I try to explain to them appeal fees because it's a weird concept for them. I tell them, have you ever appealed about anything at your university? Because students, of course, can appeal their grades, they can appeal treatment from their professors and so on. Some of them very shyly raise their hands. And I tell them, what would you say if our university told you you can submit appeal, but only if you pay 1,000 euros in advance? And then they were shocked. Why? Who would do this? And then I tell them, this is what we have in public procurement procedures. Only it's not 1,000 euro, it's up to 67,000 euro in Croatia.
But if they're successful in their appeal, these money are given back to them?
Yes, it's given back, but this is the catch. This is the other problem. They pay the appeal fee to the national state budget. But if they are successful, they do not get the appeal fee from the national budget. They get it from the budget of the contracting authority, which means the contracting authority is penalized, which means officials in contracting authorities fear making a mistake, because they know if they make a mistake and if an appeal is successful, they are taking tens of thousands of euros from their employer, which is not going to look good for them. And this is why they are and this is understandable, this is why they are very conservative in conducting public procurement procedures. They are very risk averse. And this is why maybe some other public procurement procedures, like the negotiating procedure and so on, are not widely used in Croatia.
So what would you suggest would help the system to decrease the amount of...
Remove the appeal fees.
Completely
remove the appeal fees. It's not a popular opinion, but I think the forthcoming revision of the remedies directives, I know this will not happen, of course, but I'm an academic. I have a right to dream. I would love it if the EU would abolish the appeal fees across the EU. But I know it won't happen, but I think it would be the right thing to do.
So you actually teach public procurement in the law faculty.
Yes.
What do you think is more suitable for public procurement, to be economist or to be a lawyer?
Everything. You need both. You need economists, you need lawyers, you need engineers, you need IT experts. If you are procuring IT equipment, lawyers are not enough. Because lawyers are really, really important, of course, but so are the economists, so are every other branch of education, depending on what you are procuring.
But then why don't you also teach this in, for example, economy faculty?
Yeah, I'm starting to teach public procurement at the joint masters of business school in Split and medical school in Split on south of Croatia. Yeah, they established a really good program. It's called Management in Health, Hospitals, and so on. And public procurement is really important. And a lot of the students there are going to be doctors, are going to be economists, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, let's now move to the European level. So as we know right now, the new set of the regulation is actually in some preparation phase. There are already some committees. Do you in Croatia created some of this working group that is now focused solely on this new set of regulations?
You mean, has the government established a working group to monitor the progress, or? It
doesn't have to be the government, but just like the working group that even can come from like different type of organizations, even from universities, but it's completely focused on what is going on with this new...
No, you have this in Slovakia?
No, that's why we are asking other countries so that we can inspire ourselves.
No, we don't have anything.
We would
like
love
this.
to have something like this.
But it's a really good idea. It's a really good idea. I love the idea, but the problem is, even with our own Public Procurement Act, usually when laws are amended or new legislation is proposed, you have a working group which is publicly announced, and you know who are the members, so you can see which interest groups are represented while drafting the act. And for the Public Procurement Act and each of the amendments from 2016, 2017, this was not published in Croatia. So it's unusual taking into account other legislation in Croatia.
I understand, but we know a little bit where this actually goes from the European Union. We know that they're now trying probably to kind of close the market of the European Union more. So what is your opinion about these tries and where it goes? Because, for example, we know that now they're trying to define what is European product. Now they're trying actually that it is possible or will be possible to actually exclude the third country from the competition and all these new different rules. What is your opinion about this? And what are the biggest challenges we're going to face?
Okay, I'm very much in favor of a rule-based and reciprocity-based approach to the possibility of participating in the EU public procurement market, which means I believe economic operators from the so-called third countries should be allowed equal participation in the EU market only when they stop being third country economic operators, which means when their countries sign a reciprocal free trade agreement with the EU. If we allow participation from economic operators from third countries that do not have these agreements, we are making it really difficult for the European Commission to negotiate new FTAs, which are really important to open up new markets for our own companies. So why should China negotiate an FTA, public procurement FTA, with the European Union if it knows it can close its own market, but Chinese companies can still participate in public procurement procedures in the EU? And we had a really interesting example in this regard recently when the EU-India free trade agreement was negotiated. The EU wanted a government procurement chapter, but India refused. Maybe some of the reasons why it refused is the fact that Indian companies, for the most part, can participate in the EU market. They are participating in Croatia, for example. I don't know if they are participating in Slovakia. And why should India open its own domestic market if its companies can participate in the EU market? So I think we need a comprehensive solution. I don't think what the court did with Colin and Shindao is a good solution because it gives too much discretion to contracting authorities without guidance, without clear rules how to use this discretion. And I think what's coming out from the Commission, and I wouldn't be too quick to blame the Commission for this because you need political will to accomplish anything, right? And maybe it's an issue of the lack of political will to implement a comprehensive solution. But I think the Commission, for this reason or for the other reason, is favoring a piecemeal approach, a sector-specific approach, which I don't think it's a good solution. You have the draft Industrial Accelerator Act, where it's clearly stated that exclusions will be mandatory only for EVs, batteries, energy-intensive materials like concrete, aluminium, and so on. But also exclusions are mandatory, but contracting authorities have a lot of opportunities to sidestep these obligatory exclusions if the price difference is too high, if there is not enough competition from the EU, and so on. I really believe we need a comprehensive solution. I wrote a book about it recently. It's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I'm really happy to be here because tomorrow and the day after at the conference you are organizing, I will be talking about my proposed solution to the issue of third country economic operators.
And what is your proposal?
Okay. Spoilers.
Spoilers, because this will be actually released after. So don't worry, I am the only one.
So these are not, okay, don't leak it, please.
Please, I will keep it a secret.
So the first solution would be to, so it's a 4-point approach. Contracting authorities now have the discretion to decide whether to admit or not to admit third country economic operators under Collin and Schindel. My proposal is to keep this level of discretion, but make it mandatory for contracting authorities to say if they are excluding in the tender documentation, in the tender notice, not mid-procedure like the Commission would like contracting authorities to do. The Commission in its guidance from 2025 allows this. I think this should be announced at the beginning of the procedure, and I think contracting authorities should be made to explain why they are excluding. I think this would go a long way to ensure transparency.
Let me please stop you here. Then we go to the second point, because I have immediately a question regarding this proposal. What is enough to explain? Who says this explanation?
Nobody says enough.
Was enough.
Nobody says what's enough. I don't think these explanations should be appealable. I don't think you should be able to appeal these explanations. But I believe an obligation to explain, and it's up to the contracting authorities, how serious will they interpret this. Hopefully they won't just write one word because exclamation point.
Because I want to.
Because I want to. Hopefully they won't do this, but maybe they will. But in the bigger picture, I think the obligation to explain should be there, because remedies are not the only way in which we control what contracting authorities do in public procurement procedures. You have the media. You have citizens. You have a lot of these interest groups. I mean, if the media sees how the contracting authority just said because I want to, in excluding third country economic operators, maybe there would be an article online about it. Maybe it would put pressure on the management of the contracting authority. I think it could be a really useful obligation. I think it could be useful. Maybe I'm wrong. Nobody is going to implement these proposals of mine, so we'll never know.
You never know if it will not be implemented. This is again the process in creation. This is made by person, made by people, by lawyers.
Guess. It's an educated guess. There is
you never know, and I'm just daring you with my questions as a proper student who is very carefully listening.
I love the questions. So this is the first part of the solution. The second part would be mandatory score adjustments. Score adjustments are now discretionary, which means that if contracting authorities allow participation, they can let third country economic operators compete under the same conditions as EU or covered economic operators. I don't think this is a good solution, because it gives no incentive to sign FTAs, and I believe it gets or puts EU economic operators in a bad and uneven position. I think we should legislate a range of score adjustments. The IPI, International Procurement Instrument, establishes an upper range, up to 50% or up to 100% if price is the only criteria. And we should also legislate a lower limit, let's say 20%. So a contracting authority couldn't implement a score adjustment of 1%. Okay, so the contracting authority should be given discretion to decide within this legislative range from 20% to 50%, but score adjustments should be mandatory.
Why should it be mandatory?
It should be mandatory to make it easier for EU economic operators to win contracts.
But mandatory means that, for example, I'm a mayor of a really big city, for example.
Okay.
And so we are doing maybe not only below thresholds, but even bigger. And I have this really great company coming from Japan, let's say, like maybe from Australia, I really don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it will not be that economically right because it's too far away.
Okay.
But he's really of the highest quality. He's really the best. Why should I use all these mandatory tools so that actually I threaten my tender that the best possible player will not win? So what I'm saying, I don't find your proposal wrong in any way. I'm just questioning this mandatory rule. There are millions of tenders daily. If something is mandatory, we really have to think about every possible scenario, and it should be helpful. If we actually make something mandatory, the new rule, it really should be helpful 100% in the best case.
Okay. So it's a great question, but you were talking about Japanese and Australian companies. This wouldn't apply to Japanese and Australian companies because they're signatories of the WTO GPA. So they would be exempt from this. They would be able to compete under the same conditions as you.
Okay, let's talk about some country who did not sign.
Okay, let's say China, let's say Turkey, and so on. Why? Well, first of all, the EU needs to be able to open up markets for EU economic operators, right? It won't be able to sign those free trade agreements if third countries have no incentive to participate in EU public procurement procedures. This is the incentive. The most important incentive. This way, we are sending a message: you can participate. They can allow you to participate, but this is score adjustments are a simple mechanism, very simple mechanism. Let's say you get 100 points, and you have a score adjustment of 20. You don't have 100 points anymore. Now you have 80 points. It's easily understandable. It's easily applicable, and so this is a good incentive. The second part is buy European. This is the best way, I believe, to ensure the viability of buy European mandates, because EU economic operators are given an advantage in a procedure. We are not excluding necessarily, you can exclude, but if you allow third country economic operators to participate, let's say you have a Croatian company with 100 points and a Chinese company with 100 points. Now the Croatian company still has 100 points, but the Chinese company has 70 points because it had a 30% score adjustment. It's easier to win. And the price advantage third country economic operators often have, it's much less pronounced. The good thing about score adjustments, I think, is that it recognizes the fact that in some situation you are going to need third country economic operators because nobody is going to be able to offer you what they can. We have an example like this in Croatia now. We have a big infrastructure railway project, reconstruction of 100 kilometers of rail, which is valued at from 700 million to 1 billion euro. We got 4 tenders, and all of them are third country economic operators. 2 from Turkey, 2 from India. The beautiful thing about score adjustments is if you have economic operators from third countries and no EU economic operators, the score adjustments have no effect. If you put a 30% score adjustments to all of them and there are no EU companies, they compete under the same conditions. So to go back to the beginning, when we were talking about discretion given to contracting authorities, all of this discretion is leaving us in a position collectively as a union where our industrial capacity is weakening, where our supply chains are weakening, and only through, I believe, decisive action with regards to fixing this problem can be fixed. But for it to be fixed, we need to implement a solution which will be easily understandable, and which to be applied cannot depend on the discretion of contracting authorities. But the contracting authorities has a bit of discretion in deciding whether it will implement a 20% score adjustment or a 50% score adjustment. So I hope...
Of course it answers. I was priorly talking about the mandatory thing, but we got so much deeper in this that now it's even beautifully more explained than at the beginning. So I think it's great.
One more thing. I'm sorry. The fourth aspect of all of this, and I think we can conclude with my proposal, is if we allow the participation of third country economic operators, they should be allowed to have exactly the same remedies as EU companies.
Remedies.
Yeah, the remedies.
It is now the sensitive topic.
It's a big problem because the Commission in its guidance from 2025 explicitly said that third country economic operators have no access to standard public procurement remedies, which is a constitutional disaster from the aspect of the Slovakian Constitution, Croatian Constitution, European Convention of Human Rights. It's a really big issue, and Poland is legislating accordingly. Poland excluded the possibility of using Polish standard public procurement remedies for third country economic operators, even for consortia, where you have a Polish company with a, let's say, Chinese or Turkish company. So a Polish company does not have access to courts in Poland.
Yes, we discussed this with Jan Kuzawiński when he was in the podcast. It was also very surprisingly for me. Every time we actually get this access from the law principle that we are so much used to for so many years, we are always stunned. But this is probably the changes we are heading to. That's why my next question is, what do you think, regulation or directives?
I have no idea.
What would you prefer?
I'm not sure. I really don't know. In the beginning, when the idea was first floated, that maybe the Commission is going to introduce a regulation, I loved the idea because I think all of us collectively have certain issues with transposing the directives, and it leads to fragmentation. And but now I'm not really sure. I think maybe we should have a compromise. Maybe for some aspects of the new legislative regime, we should implement a regulation, and for some other aspects, maybe a directive. Maybe a regulation for third country economic operators, and for some core issues like sustainability, strategic public procurement, and so on, and maybe a directive for everything else.
What about the European product? Now they are trying to find the criteria, how to specify what is European product. Is it something made in EU? Is it something glued in EU? What is European product? Is it something I print?
I have no idea. It's a really difficult position to be in, to try to establish what is European. That's why I think my solution is better, because it sidesteps all of these more complex issues, because it's not only difficult to establish what is made in EU, it's really difficult to establish what is a European company. This is also difficult to establish. You have a really weird situation in Poland where I think the company is called Gulemak. It's a Turkish construction company where they have been doing business in Poland for quite some time, and they established a subsidiary maybe 10-15 years ago, a subsidiary under Polish law. So under Polish law, they are a Polish company. But if their main company from Turkey submits a tender, so the same company, the owner of the Polish subsidiary, if they submit a tender in Turkey, they are considered a third country economic operator. This only shows you how complicated it is to establish the nationality of economic operator, but to establish the nationality of a product is much harder. And here you have to take into account the European Union customs code, which clearly states when you import products into the EU and you pay duties and you pay taxes and so on, they become effectively European products. So if you are a company from Slovakia and you are selling IT equipment and you are tendering in a public procurement procedure which has a buy EU mandate for IT equipment, the goods you have in your warehouse from China that were imported into EU, you paid duties, you paid taxes. These are EU goods, and you can tender them. But if you tell the contracting authority, if I win, I'm going to order the goods from China, and they are going to be here in 2 weeks, because you have maybe 30 weeks after contract signature to deliver the goods. These are third country goods, and you cannot submit a tender like this. So it's a really bizarre situation, and I'm really interested to see. I mean, we have the IAA proposal, but it's going to be interesting to see what will the new directives and/or regulations introduce with regard to Buy European.
I agree, it's bizarre because we are now trying to again make the new law, to make more rules, to limit actually the market that was truly very open. Of course, this is again made by a man, by lawyers. And so of course, there are many questions that are arising. So what if this all leads actually to the economical decrease? Are we really able to play this game with such a great economics as United States or China and so on, to try to close ourselves this much and really try to support European companies? I'm not saying the idea is bad. I'm just asking, what do you think will be the real result?
Well, you can take one of two approaches. You can have, and I'm talking about public procurement exclusively. One approach is to have price as the sole criterion. Yeah? So you award to the lowest bidder. You don't think about social procurement, green procurement, strategic procurement, third country economic operators, and you're going to have much simpler procedures, and you're going to have much lower prices. You're going to have less quality, and you won't be using 20% of the collective GDP of the European Union to support our common values. And make no mistake, you can have a left government, right-wing government in all of our member states, but we do have common values. Definitely we have common values. The other approach is we take into account green procurement, we take into account socially responsible procurement, we take into account most economically advantageous tender, which is, I believe, really, really important. And you take into account strategic procurement. Strategic procurement is not only about resistant supply chains, is not only about ensuring domestic or EU production. It's about strategic independence, which is clearly evident now with what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, for example. Strategic procurement is ensuring we are, it's a dichotomy. It's not so explored in detail, I think, in the media. When we talk about renewable energy sources, people are, my impression is people are saying, oh, again with the green, this is only environmentalism, this is going to drive our industry to the ground. Why do we need so much green energy when there is plenty of oil in Russia, plenty of natural gas in the US? We should buy. And then something like the Strait of Hormuz happens, then something like the Russian aggression in the Ukraine happens, and you don't have fossil fuels anymore. So this is why strategic procurement is important. And make no mistake, the US and China are doing the same.
I know not only those countries, but as we mentioned before, Japan and all these other countries, the European Union was definitely the most open market I probably have ever seen, to be honest, without any restrictions. That's why we are discussing into deep this change, because it is really changing the game in this geopolitical point of view.
And you're absolutely right. Each and every layer of complexity, be it green, socially responsible, strategic, is making procurement more complicated. It's making procurement more expensive. It's definitely more expensive. But this is a trade-off. Of course, it's a trade-off. The procedures are going to last longer. They're going to be more expensive. But we need to look at what we are getting in return. And we are getting a lot of good things in return also. Because when we are implementing green procurement, we are not only protecting the environment, we are protecting EU companies, because EU companies have greater green standards than maybe some other countries. When we are talking about socially responsible procurement, we are protecting disenfranchised groups in our societies, which is really important. But we are also making it easier for EU economic operators to get public procurement procedures. And when we are talking about strategic procurement, we are not only ensuring the security of our supply chains, we are also making it easier for EU economic operators to win bids in public procurement procedures.
One of my last questions will be when you're saying it like this, but from Colin, it was ruled that this responsibility of excluding the third countries is actually on the contracting authority. Okay, in Slovakia you have 3,000 municipalities. 1,000 of them is below 1,000 inhabitants, maybe even less. Very small villages with each of them with their own mayor. And how can these people make such decisions?
I agree. It is the same in Croatia and it's the same across the EU. This is why I believe Colin and Shinda are fundamentally bad judgments. And I think the Commission should move beyond them in the revision. We are expecting municipalities, kindergartens, schools to be international law experts, to know what is covered by the WTO GPA, to know which FTAs are in place, to know what the EU wants, to know about the external dimension of EU law. And this is a too big burden to put on these really small contracting authorities. Even big contracting authorities are having a lot of issues with these things. I know people were shocked when the judgments came out.
I agree.
People were shocked and people were looking for guidance. People were looking for a way through all of this. And we still do not have a way through. And I'm afraid we won't have it after the new proposed directives or regulations have been introduced.
Not very promising future.
No, I'm not an optimist.
In general. You are a great academist.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So do you have some last comments for our listeners?
Well, I mean, it's a real pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure and I'm really happy to have an opportunity to talk about these things. And it's incredible that a podcast exists where the main topic is public procurement law. It's an incredible world we live in. I was recently in Záhrebe at a student conference, which was organized by the students from the engineering faculty and our law faculty, where one of the panels was public procurement law. So the students, 18, 19, 20-year-old students, decided to have a conference where one panel would be the most boring, their words, not mine, part of administrative law. So we live in incredible times where you have podcasts dedicated to public procurement, student conferences dedicated to public procurement, and it's a wonderful time to be a public procurement scholar. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about these things with your audience, and hopefully I'll see a lot of your audience at the conference tomorrow.
I love this type of humor. Thank you very much.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Marko, really very much that you could join our podcast. Dear listeners, you are listening to the podcast of Public Procurement Office with Petra Šupáková. Thank you.
Podcast of the PPO. Podcast about everything from the world of public procurement.